Message title this morning is Responding to Opened Doors. Every morning is an open door. Every moment can be an open door. Some of us see the doors and seize them, and so life becomes a divine adventure. Some of us shrink back, or we fail to see. To fail to embrace the open door is to miss the work God has made for us to do. If we want to experience more of the Spirit of God in our lives, we need to train ourselves to look for and to respond to those moments of divine opportunity. Those words come from my heart. They also come from a book, a study guide for a new course that the library Sunday school class has begun just this morning. The title, All the Places to Go, How Will You Know? By John Ortberg, Christian author and senior pastor of the Menlo Church in Menlo Park, California. He says in some of the introductory pages, open doors may excite you or terrify you. Whatever your response is, you will approach many open doors throughout your life. But what does this image really mean? What can a door mean? What does it mean when it's open? What does it mean when God is the one who has opened it? And how can we recognize those divine opportunities that God is inviting us to walk through? John Ortberg defines an open door this way. He says an open door is an opportunity provided by God to act with God and for God. Now that's really key. I'm going to say that again. An open door is an opportunity provided by God to act with God and for God. In the book of Revelation, among the letters to the 7 churches there in the early chapters, Revelation 3 verse 8, this one to the church, ironically or not, coincidentally or not, pick whichever word you like, in Philadelphia. Not this one, of course, but it still gets your attention a little bit when you live nearby. This is what part of that message said. God, through his messenger, said to the church in Philadelphia, I know your deeds. See, I have placed before you an open door that no one can shut. I know that you have little strength, yet you have kept my word and have not denied my name. See, I have placed before you an open door that no one can shut. I want to suggest this is not just an open door, but an opened door. Is there a difference? You say, well, yeah, technically no. If a door is open, obviously somebody opened it. All right, I'll give you that one. But the point here is intention, and whose intention? God said, I have placed before you an open door. And he goes on to say more about that door in this scripture, an open door that no one can shut. God says, what I have opened, no one can shut. What I shut, no one can open. There's a clear sense that God has opened this door for the church in Philadelphia. God is behind it. God has provided this. It is an opportunity provided by God to act with God and for God. Now, learning to tell a difference between a door that just might happen to be open, there's lots of people inviting us to come through their doors, trying to sell us something, trying to get us to do something for them, trying to attract us to their position. There's all kinds of open doors, but we want to focus on discerning what are God's opportunities, those doors that God has opened and has invited us to come through doors provided by God to work with God and for God, as we'll see, for the good of the world around us. We encounter various opportunities every day. How do you know whether God has opened a particular door or whether it's just our own ambition, the nudging of a meddling relative, or sheer coincidence? And it's not always easy, but I believe that we can learn to do that. As Jesus says in the Gospel of John, "My sheep know my voice." And it may be a journey of a lifetime learning more and more to recognize God's voice. But one key that can help us right from the beginning is God does not open doors just for our own ambition, for our own acquisition of material possessions. God is not in the business of opening doors for us just that we become bigger and possess more and accomplish more for us. A divine opportunity is never for just our own benefit, but we are blessed in order to be a channel of blessing to others. That's the principle. And when God is setting before us an open door, it has to do with God's desire for us to work with him and for him in being a channel of blessing to others. Let's look at the example of Abram leaving his home in Ur. Part of what we looked at in our video this morning in the class. John Ortberg brought to our awareness that this was not necessarily a step up in life. That Ur was the center of civilization. Ur was where the wealthy, where every opportunity was gathered, all in this big metropolitan area. Canaan was kind of backwoods-ish. It's not a place you would want to go if you lived in Ur. But God didn't even tell Abram that part. God said to him in Genesis 12, "Go from your country." And often an open door is taking us from somewhere to somewhere. The Lord said to Abram, "Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to," drum roll, where's it going to be? Is it going to be the Bahamas? Going to be Hawaii? Going to be, where's it going to be? God, I'm listening. "To the land I will show you." God goes on to say, here's what's going to happen. "I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing." There's that key. "I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you I will curse, and all peoples on earth will be blessed through you." That's God's agenda. That's the purpose of the open door. Now, as we might know from experience, but it bears saying here, open doors does not necessarily guarantee that what's on the other side is always going to be thrilling, pleasant, smooth experiences, free of hardship and struggle. It does not guarantee there's going to be a set of detailed instructions or that it's going to be easy to make that choice. Just because God has opened the door doesn't mean that we can see through that open door to all that is on the other side. And so John Ortberg says, to find out what's on the other side of an open door, generally you have to go through it. And Abram, as we know now, as Abraham went through that door, he left his home without knowing where God was leading him. Walking through that door would take him to places like Sumer and Padan Aram and Canaan and then to Egypt. But it would do oh so much more. Do you realize how much of the biblical story, how much of God's plan in human history resulted from Abram walking through that door? Now, I'm not smart enough to be able to tell you what would have happened if he said no. Interesting to think about. Would it have been someone else? But Abraham had a choice. And he chose to take the risk. He chose to walk into the unknown. He chose to leave, to follow God, to trust him without knowing where God was leading. He trusted God to do what God said God would do, that God would bless him in that. And as the years went on, it got a little harder to really believe that God was going to do that, right? He was already an old man, and as he got older, and well, where's the child? Where's the offspring? It wasn't easy. There was a lot of hardship in the path, but we see where it led. And fast forward 700 years now in the story. Past Abraham's descendants, Isaac and Jacob and Joseph and his brothers, hundreds of years in Egypt, to the time of Moses. Past the plagues, the Passover and deliverance from Egypt, past the building of the tabernacle that we looked at last week. It's now probably a year later than the tabernacle. That took some time to build, by the way. We're in Numbers chapter 13. And as we read portions of this together, now the Lord said to Moses, "Send out men to explore the land of Canaan, the land I am giving to the Israelites. Send one leader from each of the 12 ancestral tribes." Here's another door. God says, I'm giving you a land. Choose 12 men to go in and explore the land that I am giving to you. Here we are again, an open door that's going to lead to Canaan, but it's centuries after Abraham. After the years of slavery, Moses is leading the Israelites through the wilderness back to their promised land. And so for 40 days, we've seen that number before, just last week, Moses on the mountain, 40 days. For 40 days, these 12 spies, explorers, conducted their covert operation. When they returned, this was their report given to Moses. We all read it, right? "We entered the land you sent us to explore, and it is indeed a bountiful country, a land flowing with milk and honey. Here is the kind of fruit it produces." And we're actually told in very vivid language about some of that fruit. Did you catch that in our reading? A cluster of grapes so large that it took how many men? 2 men to carry it on a pole between them. "We entered the land. It is indeed bountiful country, a land flowing with milk and honey. Here is the kind of fruit it produces." Now, did you notice in your bulletin, as soon as we finished reading that, there was a little bit more there? Except it wasn't there. And that's why you put those little dots at the end of something to say there's more, but we're not printing it right now. Yeah, there was more. And here's the more. But the people living there are powerful, and their towns are large and fortified. We even saw giants there, the descendants of Anak. The Amalekites live in the Negev, and the Hittites, Jebusites, and Amorites live in the hill country, and the Canaanites live along the coast of the Mediterranean Sea and along the Jordan Valley. Everywhere you look, there are these people, and they're big, and they're stronger than we are. That was the report. Then we're told that there's a man named Caleb who was among the 12 spies. And we have another but in the passage. Feel like this story's kind of going like this. Oh, the land's great, but there are all these obstacles. And then Caleb jumps in with but. Well, not what he says, but in the story. But Caleb tried to quiet the people as they stood before Moses. Apparently, the mention of all these people groups and these giants started getting people who were listening to the report a little excited, not in the good way. Caleb tries to quiet the people and says, "Let's go at once and take the land. We can certainly conquer it." And everybody said, "Oh, sure, since you put it that way." Right? No. Once more, but in contrast to what Caleb was saying, which was in contrast to what the group was saying, in contrast to the first part of what they said, but the other men who had explored the land with him disagreed. "We can't go up against them. They are stronger than we are." So they spread this bad report about the land among the Israelites. "The land we traveled through and explored will devour anyone who goes to live there." 10 of the 12 leaders refused to enter this giant-infested land. Only 2, Caleb, and you know the other one, Joshua, wanted to move through that opened door. It didn't look like it was open, but it was. God had opened it. God promised. Now, did Caleb and Joshua disagree with the facts presented in the initial report? Did they question the goodness of the land? No, absolutely not. They knew it was a good land. Did they dispute that there were giants there? No, they didn't. They did not deny any of that report. What was the one point on which they differed? Can we take it? Where's God in this? God has and will open this door. We read then what Joshua and Caleb say in response to this negative report now. "The land we traveled through and explored is a wonderful land. And if the Lord is pleased with us, he will bring us safely into that land and give it to us. It is a land flowing with milk and honey. Don't be afraid of the people in the land. The Lord is with us." And that makes all the difference. The Lord is with us. But you know the story. Those 2 were pretty outnumbered, 10-2, and then it was put to the whole congregation of Israel. And they sided with the 10. And so God let them have their way. They refused to go through the door that he had opened, that he was calling them to walk through. And so for about 38 more years, they stayed in the wilderness until that generation who said no died, and a new generation was raised up. And it was Joshua and Caleb who led them into the land that God promised through that open door. So the question for us, how do we respond to open doors? Excitement or dread? Or somewhere in between? The truth is, there can be value in being careful and not just rushing into everything. But once we know the Lord has opened a door, we need to open ourselves to possibilities that God is calling us to this divine opportunity to work provided by God, to work with God and for God in bringing blessing to others. If your natural tendency is to just go for it, well, that's great. But you might still want to seek to cultivate wisdom, to consult with others about what you go for. And I'm sure next sessions in our class is going to talk about some of these different things, how we discern, how we make decisions. So there are certain personalities that are wired one way or the other. Some are going to rush through every door that looks like it's open. And maybe those people need to take a breath, a beat, give a chance to be quiet and let God speak for a moment to kind of make sure. On the other hand, if you're generally closed to new opportunities, even if they seem to be coming from God, then openness needs to be something we work on. John Ortberg gives these characteristics of people with a closed-door mindset. And I don't understand where he's going with all of this, but I'm just going to list it as he does, that people who have more of a closed-door mindset believe there's only a fixed amount of talent in the world, and I'm still scratching my head over that. Maybe it means, well, this thing that this door seems to lead to requires talent, and I don't have it. I think that's what he's talking about, that we say, well, that person can do this and that. I don't have what it takes. And maybe we do more than we realize, and maybe God's going to develop it as we follow through a door that he's calling us to. People with the closed-door mindset try to assure success in life. I get that. Sometimes it's hard to take a first step unless you can see all the way to the end and be sure it's going to work out. Some of us naturally tend to process that way. Closed-door mindsets really struggle to risk failure. And if you can see a reasonable chance of stumbling or falling, or maybe this won't work out from as far as I can see, sometimes it's hard to take that step. But the author says ultimately a refusal to trust God because of fear is what's behind it. Fear of failure, perhaps. Fear of criticism. Fear of any number of things. We can say, well, it's my personality, but ultimately, it's a refusal to trust God. If God is the one who has opened that door, if God is the one who's provided that divine opportunity to work with him and for him in order to bring blessing to others. In contrast, characteristics of people with an open-door mindset, ready to embrace the challenge, unhindered by uncertainty. The fact that we don't know all the details doesn't have to keep us stuck and afraid of walking through. And they understand that they are blessed in order to bless others. Now, this kind of narrows it a little bit. It's not about just, I'm bored and I'm looking for the next challenge. I'm just going to jump at every door. And especially not if our motivation is how I can get ahead, how I can get more. That's not God leading. But when it's opportunity to be a blessing to others, a channel of blessing, and God seems to have opened that, and he's speaking to our hearts, he's calling us through that. We've tested, we've discerned. We need to be unhindered by uncertainty. We need to understand that we're blessed in order to bless. We need to be willing to walk through that door. Again, I know that we may be all over the map on our natural tendencies with this topic. For me, I don't know if it was purely by nature or by nurture, but somewhere along the line in my life development, I developed a superpower. A personal strength that enables me to see all of the potential problems or obstacles in a path that's being considered. It can also be a super weakness. I get it. I get it. Struggling to take a first step if you can't see where it leads. There was a time in my life where I kind of had to have the whole sermon series mapped out before I'd start at the beginning. You know the time that stands out most in my life? When I felt called to take a step through a door related to just preaching, what I do. And I felt like I knew hardly anything about the topic. I had no idea what this series was going to look like, how long it would take, or where I was headed. I just felt that God had placed this door before me and had spoken to me and was calling me through it. You know what series that was? It was a series on faith and vision. Summer before last, leading into the fall, when God led us to discern together to step into this sharing the vision process. I don't know how God used that in the whole thing. He certainly used that in me and maybe used that in us to lead to other things which have led us to where we are right now in life. our life as a church. Oh, so many other things in my life that I can look back and I can see this open door, and each one has its own story. Some of them I've shared before, some of them I haven't. Maybe I will. Whether we're talking about my own call to ministry, whether we're talking about the whole story behind meeting Reba and then eventually marrying her, whether it's my choice of seminary, whether it was my call to the Locust Grove Church of the Brethren, my call to the Indian Creek Church of the Brethren, preceded by some closed doors and then 2 doors open at the same time. How are you going to figure that one out? But God, in the midst of all of that. Let me mention one that's less life-shaping. It was just a really small door. 12 years ago, I lose track of time, maybe more than that now. I found out that they were conducting some auditions for a show that I loved, that was going to involve a lot of men at some theater up the road here that we'd never been to. The show was called 1776. I love that musical. It's about local history. It's about our nation's history. It's funny. It's got music. A lot of men. I thought this would be fun to be in, but we've got younger children, and I've got a job, and in order for that door to be open, a couple other things needed to happen. Reba needed to be on board. That's pretty important. And she wasn't right away. Even if I did audition, I'd have to get cast. I mean, I could still go through, and then that door shuts. And like I said, it's a relatively small thing. I did walk through that door. I did get a small part in that show. But a lot of things happened that resulted from that. Karis met her husband through those connections. We met a lot of other people, and some of them are here today serving as part of our community. I had no idea. It wasn't a real spiritual thing. It was something I was interested in, but as Reba and I processed it, part of the decision to go was what opportunities it might lead to. Another community of people that God might use us in building relationships with. I share that not plenty of doors that I've missed. I need to share one of those too this morning just to let you know I get it. This one goes back to the 3rd grade. There's a lot of things about, as I get older, about my childhood, even about our early marriage. Reba said, "You remember this?" No, that's gone. "You remember this?" No, I have no recollection of that, but I trust you that you're telling me the truth, that really happened. It gets a little dicey when it's, "Do you remember what you said or what you did that really made me mad?" And it's like, now I really have to trust you that you're telling me the truth because I can't deny or dispute. This 3rd grade memory has been pretty strong on my life. Sitting in class, I don't remember what was going on, but some kid who was he wasn't really a popular kid. He was really one who kind of was on the edge of getting in trouble and everything, but he was a little bit intimidating. And I remember him whispering to me, and I don't remember whether he said, "Are you a Christian or are you one of those Christians?" But something in his tone kind of intimidated me, but he was clearly asking, "Are you a Christian?" And I froze. And I was terrified of walking through that door. And all I did was keep asking, "What?" like I didn't hear the question or didn't understand. I don't know how that story might have been different had I walked through. God gives us opportunities, sometimes every day. Divine opportunities provided by Him to work with Him and for Him in bringing blessings to others. It's true of us as individuals. It's true of us as a church. And this is not about, we've already made a decision collectively to walk through this door of consulting and this door of assessment and of discerning a plan and all of that. So this is partly about that, just reminding us and encouraging us that we've discerned that God is the one who's called us to walk through this door. We've walked through without knowing what all was going to be on the other side. We're still finding that out. And just to kind of re-encourage us as we're at this point where we are now, but also to speak to us individually and not just about finding your place in the plan. We want to encourage that, and if you missed last Sunday, we want to help to find ways to kind of catch you up and listen to the message if you get a chance on YouTube. I'll tell you how to get there if you don't know. Ask us questions. We've got these cards to fill out and to turn in if God is speaking to you about one particular part. And this isn't about just everybody doing stuff. This is about where we are and needing to have some small teams to kind of give some further shape to some of these things we're going to be doing this year. It's not just about finding your place in this plan, although that's what some of our focus is right now. But God's plan is so much bigger than this plan. We're one church, and this is one season of our life, and this is what we've discerned to try to focus on together in the next year and the next 3 years. But God's plan is so much bigger than that. But the challenge to find your place in the plan, the challenge to be open and discerning and watching and listening for those open doors in your life, those times when God is inviting you to step through because He has divinely opened that door. And He has a plan for you to work with Him, work for Him, in being a channel of blessing to somebody else. May it be so in your life and mine, and our life together, for God's work in this world.